Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Now these studies that I have for you today are just going to amaze you and just blow your mind because they have so many hidden tricks in them and just amazing. Now this first position, white is on move. Please pause the video and try to figure it out. Now I hope you found the correct solution because I'm going to show it right now. Now it's obvious that white is playing for a win here because he has a bishop and two pawns against the rook, and this pawn is really dangerous, just trying to promote here to a queen. And the main point about this position is that we can't just move the king and then expect to promote this pawn to a queen, because he's going to play rook to e1 and just sacrifice the rook for the pawn. After we promote, he's just going to sacrifice the rook and play king to h5 and just take our pawn, and it's going to be a draw with a lone bishop against the king. So that's why we have to do something about this. And well, if we just do some random move like bishop to b3, again the same thing, he's going to take our pawn and then also take this pawn. Now what's good to mention also is that black doesn't even have to win this pawn on h4. He can just move his king in this corner here on h8 and it's still going to be a draw. Because white has the wrong bishop here. He would like to have a dark squared bishop. With a light squared bishop and with an h-pawn, this position is just drawn. If you go to this corner, basically you can't play king to g6 because it's already a stalemate, black can't move, and even if you do something else, well, you can't do anything because again, black is going to go to h7 and you just can't move closer now because it's going to be stalemate again. Black has no moves, and if you move the bishop from this diagonal, well, king to g8, and after you go back, king to h8, and it's just a draw. So you really can't allow black, to take your pawn here on e7 because then it's just a draw. So after you figure that out, the only reasonable move here is bishop to e6. Just blocking the rook from taking your pawn, because now if black plays rook to e1, you can just play your king here to d7 and you're threatening to promote to a queen. Now the only thing for him to do is to start checking you. But the point is that you're going to come closer with the king now just on this c and d files. Because if you go to the b file, he's going to check you, and after you move, he's just going to go here to b8 and he's going to take your pawn on the next move. So it's again going to be a draw. So that's why you have to go on these c and d files, because he can't go here to the last rank to defend against the promotion of the queen, because this square is defended by the bishop and this square here is protected by the pawn, so he can't, go there and stop the pawn from promoting. So that's why after a couple of checks here, he's just losing, because he can't defend this pawn from promoting. After rook to e1, we just promote a queen and we're completely winning. But this is of course not the end. After bishop to e6, black has some other defenses. First of all, what will you do after rook to a1? If you play something like king to d7 trying to promote to a queen, he's just going to give you a check again and just take this pawn with a known draw. Now it's important that in this position you saw king to d8. The point is that after, if rook goes here, first of all, okay, we just promote to a queen, and after this we just block the check with the bishop and we're winning. But after rook to a8 check, you just play bishop to c8. You block the check and you're going to promote to a queen on the next move. And of course, if he starts checking you again, it's the same thing as before. You just go on these c and d files and attack the rook, and then you're going to promote to a pawn on the next move. So this rook to a1 defense just doesn't work for black. Now the best possible defense for black here, the best possible try, is to play rook to d1 to prevent the king from going there, which was our plan, and it's a really nasty plan for black. So you might come to a plan of king to f7, and after he checks you, to go to g8, and after he checks you again, to go to h8, so he doesn't have any more checks here, and you think, okay, I'm very smart, I'm going to promote the queen on the next move, he doesn't have any defense against it, rook to e1, we just promote to a queen. But he actually has this beautiful resource, and if you saw it when you were solving it, congratulations, because it's not an easy one to find. And it's rook to g7. Now this is just beautiful because he's threatening to take your pawn here and again come into a drawing position. And if you promote the queen, After rook to h7, king to g8, he sacrifices the rook, and it's a stalemate. The king is stalemated because the queen that has been promoted here cuts off the black king, and also this pawn cuts off the black king, and the king here makes sure that black's king is stalemated. So this is a beautiful resource for black, and bishop to f7 also doesn't save white because we can just take and then do the same thing here, and it's again a stalemate. So then the question is, if you can't move the king because it's a draw, and you can't move the bishop anywhere because he just plays rook to e1 and just takes your pawn here, then what can you do with white? Can you win this position? Well, the answer is yes. You have one more piece here, and it's a pawn. And as we saw in the last variation, this pawn was making sure this king was stalemated here on h6, so we just play h5. We try to get rid of this pawn, because if he takes it, then okay, we can go to f7, and now he no longer has these tricks of, a stalemate, and you also have this g7 square that you didn't have before because the king was here, and now you can just escape these checks like this, as you can see. And now again, the same thing, you're going to go here on c and d files, and once you attack the rook, he can't do anything because you're going to promote to a queen on the next move. So this h5 is a really beautiful move here after rook to d1, but black doesn't have to take it. Black can of course play something like king to g7, but you just play h6. You just basically want to get rid of this pawn. After king to h7, you check the king. Okay, if he takes again, what you do is you play king to f7. And if he tries to, take your pawn, just bishop to e6, blocking him from this option. And again, if he tries to check you, now you go to this h8 square, because he doesn't have this stalemate trick like before, because this pawn that was here on h4 is no longer here, and the king can go to this g5 square, so, and you're just completely winning here. It's amazing how in this study there was such a small number of pieces, but it was still so complex. Now I hope that you found this study amazing, because the next one is going to be as well. So in this position, white is on move. Again, pause the video and try to figure it out. Okay, I hope you got it, because I'm going to show it right now. Now, white is in check, basically. The last move, black gave white a check. What's important to see in this position is that if you move the king to a right square, you could be winning. Because like in the previous example, this pawn is very dangerous, and this rook just can't stop the pawn from promoting, because this bishop is here really nicely protecting all these defensive squares. And the knight also just can't stop this pawn from promoting to a queen, so you have to find the right square for your king. Now the first move that comes to mind is probably just king to e2, because moving the king there means that the knight has no checks. Basically, if he takes here, we can just promote to a queen, of course, and the only check and defense for black here would be to play rook to g2. That's the only check. And now the idea is just to go to e1. And it seems like you're winning. Black can't defend the pawn from promoting, but he actually has a hidden resource in this position, and it's really beautiful. He can take on d2. Now, the point here is that if you recapture the rook, well, he takes your bishop on c4, which is not defended anymore, and he's going to come back and defend this pawn from promoting. Now, this is an easy draw for black, because whatever white does here, black is just going to keep jumping around this pawn with the knight, giving checks to the opponent's king. And if he goes to this side, again, check. And if he tries to go to f8, we just wait here with the knight, and we come closer with the king. And once you promote a queen, it's just a draw. So that's why this rook takes d2 is a really good resource for black. Now, one question you might be asking yourselves is, why would I capture this rook? I can just promote to a queen, right? But here you're not going to draw the game, you're actually going to lose the game. After knight f3, this is a checkmate. A check to the king, the rook is protected, all the squares are taken, and it's just a checkmate here. A beautiful checkmate. But again, this is not the end of the variation. White has another trick up his sleeve. He can play bishop to e2. Just ignoring the rook, ignoring the promotion of the pawn to a queen, just playing rook to e2 calmly. Because again, you can't come back to protect this promotion square. And what are you going to do here with black? It seems like you're losing because we're just going to promote. But black has this beautiful resource, rook to d5. Now what's the point of this move? Why is this the only drawing move for black? Now, as you can see, your king is kind of stuck here. These squares are taking away from him. Now, if you do something stupid, let's say move your bishop here, he's going to give you a check here, sacrificing the knight, and then he's just going to get your pawn. So you have to basically promote to a queen, which is also the most logical move in this position. But here comes the idea behind black's master plan here. It was just to play knight f3 check. And you basically have to take the bishop, because you have no moves with the king, you have to take it, and now rook to d4, sacrificing your rook. If the king moves, you take the queen has to take, and your king again is just stalemated here. This is such a beautiful variation here, and pretty hard to see also. Now because of this beautiful variation that we just saw, king to e2, rook to g2, king to e1 just doesn't work because of rook takes d2. And if you saw that, well done, because it was not that easy. Now that we got rid of this king to e2 move, what should I do? King to e3 is another possible move, but we can quickly just eliminate this option because he can take the bishop with a check, and after we recapture it, just rook to e6, picking up the pawn, with a draw of course. So this doesn't work, and we only have two more moves, king to e4 and king to f4. Now after king to e4, he again just takes the bishop on c4, and after we promote to a queen, he has this nasty fork on d6, and we're basically going to lose this game now as white. So we don't want that. That's why the only move that we have left is king to f4. Now what's going on here? We're basically attacking the knight, and if he does, I don't know, something stupid like rook here, we're just going to promote to a queen. And something like knight to d3 is a nice idea, that after we take, he plays rook to e6 and just gets our pawn with a drawing endgame. But of course, after knight to d3, we don't have to take it, we can play king to f5, attacking the rook and threatening to promote to a queen on the next move, just immediately winning the game. The only try for black basically is to play rook to e6, attacking the pawn, just giving up the rook, so we can have this fork on the king and on the pawn. And it seems like black is going to draw this endgame, but we have this important move here, king to g3. And after he takes the pawn, bishop to h3, cutting the king off, and this king, as you can see, is in a big trouble. Now whatever black does, he's going to get checkmated in two moves. After knight f3 check, he has no moves here but to play king to h1 and just bishop to g2 checkmate. Now this is such a beautiful checkmate with a knight and a bishop, and it was not easy to see it from the beginning. Now guys, if you like these videos, please subscribe to my channel, watch more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.